All right, what I want to talk about today is, you guessed it, gluten-free. Now this is kind of funny. Now there's validity to being gluten-free, okay? Now, but you have to understand for what reasons. Now remember, these are going to be my opinions on what it means to be gluten-free and why is it healthy or why isn't it. Now there's a subset of people in society which have celiac disease. Celiac disease is a body's immune response to the actual gluten protein, which causes all sorts of GI disruption and causes all sorts of bowel inflammation, which negatively impacts the individual. So obviously those individuals with celiac disease avoid gluten. That's medical reason. Now there's a whole nother set in society that says, oh, I'm gluten free, or does this have gluten in it? Or, and so what I've noticed now is grocery stores having gluten-free sections and advertising cookies or pastas or other things gluten-free, and the replacement being that with rice flour. In my opinion, if the person doesn't have a celiac disease and they're going out of the way to get gluten-free items, it defeats the purpose of being gluten-free if it's not for a medical condition. And I'll explain why. So I think if you're going to be gluten-free, it's more, and you don't have celiac disease, you're doing gluten-free just for yourself, it's out of the reason to decrease the glycemic load, the glycemic burden that you have in your diet. Okay, so let me explain that a little bit further. The reason gluten is mainly a protein that's found in wheat products. So what happens when you go gluten-free? You effectively remove all wheat from your diet. That includes cereals, pastas, breads, bagels, cookies, and so what you're effectively doing is removing a massive carbohydrate load from your diet, with the exceptions of oatmeal, quinoa, barley, things like that, which don't actually have gluten in them. And the reason that helps is because those carbohydrates without the gluten, which aren't wheat-based, usually have a much better glycemic index profile. Now, what do I mean by that? That means that the amount your blood sugar will spike after eating the food. There's a video on this, look in my description below, and the amount your blood sugar will spike up and the carbohydrate load you'll get in the course of 2 hours after eating a particular food item, if it's gluten-free, generally speaking, will have a really good profile. Now, if you're eating another bakery type product or another carbohydrate product which is gluten-free, but the wheat is replaced with rice flour, you pretty much take this graph, crumble it up, shoot it, and throw it away. So replacing your diet, eating stuff that's gluten-free without having celiac disease, replacing them with things like that have rice flour, I think defeats the purpose of going gluten-free, because you're still going to get the carbohydrate load. And if you look at my glycemic index scale, where does rice, all these items with gluten, white bread, bagel, French bread, oatmeal cookies, all these things have in common have gluten. And they're really high in the glycemic index scale, and they also have a really high glycemic load. But at the same time, I don't have rice on here, but I'll tell you right now, rice falls up here. So if you're eating the gluten-free foods that have been replaced with rice flour, you forget about it. You're kind of missing the point there, in my opinion, okay? So if you're replacing these gluten items for your healthy carbohydrates with chickpeas, beans, lentils, legumes, barley, things like nuts, cashews, yes, that's the right idea. That's the right idea, because you don't have a huge glycemic index, inadvertent translating to a lower glycemic load. And remember, why does all this matter? Well, that brings us back. Why is this whole gluten-free a big thing? Because it brings us back to the biochemical pathway of sugars not burned, or carbohydrates not burned, are converted and stored as fat. Okay? So the whole glycemic index, this whole gluten-free effectively is to lower fat, decrease the glycemic load, and decrease carbohydrate load on the body, but it doesn't serve you any well if you're just replacing it with rice flour, because it's still going to end up at a high glycemic item with fat. Now, there are other certain size. I know there are some people that have gluten sensitivity without having actual celiac disease. I actually know a coworker that didn't have diagnosed celiac disease, but always had irritable bowel syndrome, always had problems with GERD. They actually cleaned up their diet, took gluten out of it for 2-3 weeks, and they got off all their GERD meds. They weren't symptomatic, didn't wake up in the middle of the night with indigestion. So she may have a mild form of celiac disease. I don't know. But the whole point behind gluten-free, in my opinion, is to decrease the glycemic index, number one. Decrease the amount of carbohydrates that end up being stored as fats, and decrease your amount of triglycerides. Decrease your glycemic burden, okay? And also start eating foods that are on the higher level, 8, 9, and 10 of this food health continuum all along. In reality, it goes with my one-page diet plan. So really, it just, if you cut out the gluten, it's effectively cutting out the breads and the carbs, which really is in parallel with my one-page diet plan. I don't think everybody needs to follow this or has to follow it, but this is what I do. This is what I follow. These are my opinions. But that's my opinion on gluten-free. If you're going to be gluten-free, great. I actually am for the most part. I mean, you saw my cookie reviews, but I really am for the most part. And I try to be with the understanding it's for me at least, it's for the glycemic index load and not burdening my blood levels with triglycerides and fat and not getting those carbohydrates stored as fats. So that's what it is for me. I don't know. You may follow it because you have a gluten sensitivity in form of celiac disease, but if you're just following it to lower the number of carbohydrates, I would say try not to replace those carbohydrates with rice flour because it kind of defeats the purpose of being gluten-free. That's my opinion on it. Thanks for watching. I hope that taught you something good. Any questions about what I said, please leave them in the comments below. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it. My opinion on being gluten-free. There are other videos. I also have videos on my one-page diet plan. I have a video on the explanation of the health scale continuum. I have an explanation video on that. And I have an explanation video on this. And those are my descriptions. So thanks again. Thanks for watching. Please give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button if you want to hear my opinions on foods and how they impact our health and our daily diet. And thanks again.